right, well, good afternoon. How's everybody doing? So I'm not going to use the microphone for COVID reasons, so that we keep that microphone clean. Can everybody hear me in that? That's awesome. My name is Aiken. I'm the Vice Chancellor of Student Affairs. Thank you very much for coming to our very first, and what we hope will be a tradition here at UofSC Aiken, called Profiles of Success. And our goal is to bring terrific community leaders to come to campus to give a little talk about what 3 leadership lessons they might want to impart to our college students. I am very excited. I can give you a long resume of who our very first speaker is. But I'm not going to do that because she's going to be awesome, and I want to just get straight to her. Many of y'all, if you're from Aiken, probably know Ms. Gail Diggs. She is a city councilwoman. She is a civic advocate. She has led and mentored many folks in this community. She has been a personal hero of mine in many ways. I look up to her greatly. I've had the pleasure of working with her and her family in a variety of different capacities. And she is just one of the best people you're going to know. And one of the very first people I thought of when I thought about starting this lecture series was Ms. Gail Diggs got to come talk to our students. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Gail Diggs. Thank you. Help me welcome you.
Cowardice asks the question, is it safe? Expediency asks the question, is it politic? Vanity asks the question, is it right? And there comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe, nor politic, nor popular, but one must take it because one's conscience tells one that it is right. Good afternoon. That is one of my favorite quotes from Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. It speaks volumes about leadership. I'm going to take the opportunity today to personalize a situation that has required me to take a lead. I want to share that with you. Approximately 1 year ago, news media outlets across the country started flooding us with information about a virus. The virus is called COVID-19. And then on March 6, in 2020, the first case of COVID was diagnosed here in South Carolina. At that time, the governor had to make some decisions. To close the schools, shut down some businesses and restaurants. And a lot of companies allowed their employees to start working from home. Many of us worried about the impact of these shutdowns, the impact on our economy. Many thought that this was just a very temporary thing, that it wouldn't last very long. And so many of us were wrong. As a member of City Council, we had to make some decisions that were not popular. Those decisions required us to also shut down some businesses and restaurants. And we also knew that we had to take it a step farther. The CDC had issued some guidelines for us to follow. And we met and decided that we would ask all residents of the city of Aiken to wear a mask. Now, y'all know the CDC's guidelines: wear a mask, social distance, wash your hands, use sanitizer, and they also discourage you from attending large events. But there were still those who refused to trust science and came up with their own theories. My previous job as a health educator at the South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control required me to coordinate and present information on pandemic flu. This was in 2007, 2008. That's far back. I had to present to town halls, school districts, fire departments, law enforcement agencies, emergency management personnel in 6 counties: Aiken, Allendale, Bamberg, Barnwell, Calhoun, and Orangeburg counties. And I decided that I would use the information from the Spanish flu of 1918. Have you heard of that? Did y'all hear of that? Okay. For those of you who haven't, the Spanish flu of 1918 killed 675,000 people in the U.S. alone. More deaths were occurring in the ages 5 to 25, little children, and young people like soldiers, because some of the cases, the first cases that we knew of started at a military base in Kansas. They thought that this virus had originated in Spain, and that's why they referred to it as the Spanish flu. But these soldiers were getting sick, and they were dying by hundreds every few minutes. So many people died during that pandemic. They not only ran out of hospital beds, but they ran out of caskets. Some of the symptoms, people would have their lungs fill up with fluid, their skin would turn blue, and then others would drop dead. They didn't know how long it was going to last, because there was actually 4 different waves. We're in now, for this pandemic, I think we're in the 2nd wave. And people had thought that we really wouldn't have a 2nd wave. But of course, that's not true. And as I reflected on that pandemic and knew that this could happen again, I had just prayed when I educated people in 2007, 2008, that it wouldn't be in my lifetime, wouldn't be in my children's lifetime, and my grandchildren's lifetime. But here we are. And when the pandemic first began and started spreading through our community, all of us had the mantra, faith over fear. And so many people refuse to see this as anything worse than a bad flu. This virus, this pandemic, had been predicted by scientists. It became very, very personal for me in April of 2020. Many of you don't know, but one of the first COVID deaths here in Aiken County was a UofSC Aiken student, a nursing student, 30-year-old Joshua Bush. My maiden name is Bush. His mom was a distant relative of mine, right here at UofSC Aiken. Then, on April 22nd, I got a call from my relatives in New York. My first cousin, Idri Bey, a 27-year veteran with the New York Fire Department, 60 years old, died from COVID. He was the 8th member of the New York Fire Department to die. And I remember watching a tribute to him from your New York fire department that was featured on CNN. And just crying because none of us could go to New York. There couldn't be a funeral. But he had a brother that was there, taking care of their father. And when I talked to him, he told me, he said, you know, he said, Dad is sick too. He's in the hospital. And I don't think that he's going to make it. Just 8 months before the pandemic started, they had lost their mother, who had retired here, bought a house, and Idris Bey's intentions was to move to South Carolina. He was engaged to marry his second wife. He was going to live in her house, in my aunt's house. He was looking forward to doing that last summer before he died. So shortly after I got the call about my uncle being sick, I got another call that he had passed on. And there again, none of us got to say goodbye. There was no funeral. Then, several other distant relatives passed away over the course of the next 6 months. There was death all around us. And I know for some there were graveside services, others there were just cremations. In September, UofSC Aiken mourned the loss of another student, a 2013 graduate. Her name, Demi Bannister. Demi was a second grade teacher at Windsor Elementary in Columbia. She was an only child. When Demi started UofSC Aiken in 2013, I was contacted by her uncle, who was my classmate at the University of South Carolina in Columbia. And he asked me if it was okay for him to share my information with Demi just in case she needed anything. And I said yes. Unfortunately, Demi never had to call me, so I didn't get a chance to get to know Demi. But from the news coverage, everyone that knew her adored her. Matter of fact, she had a unique way of teaching her students. She would do a lot of her lessons to the tune of Old Town Road, one of my favorite. Y'all like Old Town Road? So while she was in the hospital, her mama became sick and was diagnosed the day that she died. Her mom was a nursing instructor at Midlands Tech in Columbia, and she was also a person who had received her accolades. She died, and since Demi was the only child, all that's left is Mr. Bannister. Because of health disparities in African Americans and Latinos, there is a high incidence of death from COVID in this population. So I thought about all of this and what I could do. Some of the decisions we had to make on council, especially to continue the mass state indefinitely, was not a pleasant experience. We had people showing up at the council meeting maskless. And of course, there was really nothing we could do because they all said they had health conditions. We received emails that wasn't always so nice, phone calls. Sometime if I was in business or went to pick up some food and ran into someone that did not want to wear a mask, They, of course, blamed me and said masks didn't work. So I decided, I know what I can do. I'm a member of Facebook, and I know Facebook is a little outdated for y'all, right? Y'all don't do Facebook no more, do you? Some people do, some people don't. Well, that was a tool that I could use to do some things. So I have about 2,000 friends, maybe a little bit over 2,000 friends. So what I started doing was posting DHEC reports daily. I was also sharing articles with prevention and health-saving tips. I was reminding people that there are long-term effects and damage from COVID-19, something we didn't see with the Spanish flu of 1918. So I know that a good leader has to build trust amongst their followers. A good leader shares the truth based on scientific facts with their followers, knowing that these followers are dependent on you and your words to steer them in the right direction. A good leader meets them where they are and let their followers know that they care. I had people on my Facebook page that didn't always get the newspaper, didn't have access to any other platforms but Facebook, and they thought, okay, we're on Facebook now, we have really arrived. But a lot of them still weren't computer savvy. So they depended on me, and I'd get inboxes. Thank you for sharing that information. I decided there was 3 ways that I could show leadership during this pandemic. Number 1, communicate. Communicate the severity of the virus. When this virus first began, we had people that was asking us not to share our thoughts about the severity of the virus. Just wait it out. We didn't want to scare people. But I didn't agree with that because of my knowledge from the Spanish flu of 1918. I wanted to prepare people for what was about to come. Some people thought it was just a bad flu. The flu kills between 12 and 69,000 people a year. This virus has already killed more people than World War II. And we had 675,000 to die in 1918. We're already up to 438,000 people in the U.S. Think about those 438,000 families who have lost a loved one. Young mothers left children behind. 2 weeks ago, I saw on Facebook one of my good friends had lost or was asking for prayers for her entire family, but mainly for her husband, who was in the hospital with COVID and on a ventilator. They had been married 19 years. They had such a beautiful love story. They raised their niece and 2 nephews because their mother and father died years before. So they took them in as their own. And then they had 1 child together. They buried him last week. Before I left home this morning, I got a call from my sister that one of my church members and someone that I greatly admired, sat in church with a lot, Love to hear he and his family sing. Worked at Savannah Riverside. Is in the hospital. He's on a ventilator. They're not expecting him to make it. 2 weeks ago, they buried his mom, not with COVID. She had other conditions, but they had the service outside. There were a lot of people there, and they went out to eat after the ceremony. And many of them end up testing positive for COVID. One of my coworkers came in yesterday. This is one that I've been trying to convince to take the vaccine, please. They're still trying to make up her mind. And I think she'll eventually decide to take it. I've had both shots, had my last one last Thursday. And she came in and said her friend is in the hospital on a vent. They let her FaceTime. And even though her eyes were closed, the nurses told her that she could still hear them. So she is struggling with that. I see this every day. I work in a health center. I know what this virus does to people. I know. I see it. So many times I've had people come and cry in my office. And yes, I did give them a hug, Ahmed. I did, because they needed one. They needed one. They don't understand how this could happen, how they could lose all these relatives, many of them gone much too soon. So I also decided I had to educate. We heard that this virus was a hoax. This virus is not a hoax. I hope we know that now. It's not one of those things that if we ignore it, it's going away. That hadn't happened. It's also not political. While I was posting on Facebook, I had several of my friends, and I've got friends from all walks of life. And I've got politicians, I've got school teachers, I've got principals, I've got doctors, I've got lawyers. But every time I would do a DHEC post, I'd see somebody just crawl in there and make a comment that we shouldn't worry about this virus because the incidence of death is so low. It's not going to kill us. That may have been true for them, but it did not apply to my family and friends. So I didn't run with that. And eventually, what do? You end up blocking them on Facebook. And that's what I did. So now, after communicating and educating, I'm on a mission to vaccinate, to help as many people as I can get this vaccine. Our health center, Rural Health Services, the Clyburn Center here in Aiken, has an event on Thursday at Second Baptist. We just had one in Windsor, because you got to meet people where they are. You got to get down to the rural communities. For those who have no access to internet or transportation, you got to make sure that they are able to be vaccinated. I think my job at Rural Health Services is a blessing, because this has given me the opportunity to focus on this mission. But also, it's good when you leave a job and people tell you they'd love to have you back. So I managed to maintain a good rapport with DHEC. And every Wednesday I send those who have no access to a computer, can't manipulate the VAM system, I send a list to DHEC so that they can get vaccinated. And with African Americans not being able to, for some, trust this vaccine, after the bad experience with the Tuskegee Project years ago. We have to do everything we can to show them how important this is. And that with new technology, yes, you can get a vaccine like that. They couldn't do that in 1918. And all of you ask, when will this pandemic be over? When? We don't know. But we all got to do our part, and y'all doing it today. You social distancing, you're wearing your mask, and you're wearing it right. Oh, I only see one nose. Oh, you quick. But you're social distancing. And I know for those of you who are dating, it might be a little difficult unless you know the status of that person that you are dating, right? I just couldn't imagine. I just couldn't imagine. But what we won't do is do what they did in Philadelphia when they thought that it was over in 1919. They decided to have a parade. And you see, we have shut down so much here in Aiken. We won't have the Triple Crown this year, and I know that's one of Ahmad's favorite events. We won't have the Memorial Day parade. We won't have so many events that we look forward to. Downtown Development Association is trying their hardest to keep people entertained, and it's so hard. But we're not going to have the parade. We're not going to open up everything, because when they had the parade and 200,000 people showed up for the parade, less than 2 weeks later, 12,000 of those people that attended the parade dropped dead. We're not going to do it that way. I know cabin fever has set in for most of us. I tell you, I have 4 grandchildren, 2 here, Harper in Houston, very feisty, 7, and Houston's about to turn 4. And I get to see them on a regular basis, thank God for that. But my grandchildren in Raleigh, I don't get to see, get to FaceTime them every day. The baby is 5 months old, and her big brother is about to turn 2. I'm missing everything. I'm missing the hugs. I'm missing everything. But you know what? If we all do what we're supposed to do, and that's wearing the mask to protect not only you, but those around you, social distance, wash our hands, be respectful of each other. If we do that, I can see maybe in the fall of us being able to go to football games, maybe not at full capacity, but with more people than we have had so far. I see us being able to go to a movie theater and watch a movie. Boy, I miss that so much. But also to hang out downtown to different events. All of those things are possible if we only do our part. So Martin Luther King said that ultimately a genuine leader is not searching for consensus, but is a molder of consensus. So there is hope for us. The vaccines are making a difference. But remember, as a leader, there comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe, nor politic, nor popular, but one must take it because one's conscience tells them that it is right. Thank you for your attention. See, I know y'all tired. I wasn't going to bore you to death with a an hour speech, even though he told me to keep talking and talking and talking, and I can't do that. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions for Ms. Dick?
Y'all sure? Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad.
It's good in this situation.
Is it good? No? Some say yes, some say,
If
Okay.
you will help me thank Mr. Keith Pierce, who's in the back. He's been taping this for us so we can live see it as well as have it on tape. Thank you, Keith, for being there.
And I begged them not to do that, too.
Thank you again for coming. Thank you to Ms. Diggs.
Thank
We have a
you.
little gift for her.
Thank you. Here.
A little gift for you. Thank you very much for being here.
I look forward to coming back and getting my hug. Right now, it's just virtual.
That's right, we just got to do it. Ms. Diggs will be here for a minute afterwards for any social distancing questions that you might have. Thank you again for coming. Our next one will be in April. We haven't set the date yet, but I do appreciate you being here. Have a great